Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the stock market as well as other macro indicators and, of course, the Magnificent Seven stocks. So, starting off with fear and greed, we can see that we are up in greed territory. We were in extreme fear what felt like not that long ago, but with positive news around tariffs and trade deals, we are getting back up into greed. And going over to one of the charts that we've been talking about in these stock market videos every week is that this is sort of normal. Anytime you get a new presidential administration, you have sort of an experiment going on with new economic policies, and it's normal to see downward or sideways price action for about 3 to 4 months, and we've had that. So this would be about the time where if we are in a non-recessionary path, we would be making our way to new all-time highs. But if we were in a recessionary path, then I would expect these former lows to eventually be broken sooner than later. So far, we're still kind of, I'd say, at a point right here. And if we create another higher low, maybe away we go. Something else to consider is that it takes a while for these policies to really have their impact. And on average, the second year of the presidential cycle tends to be one of the worst. So people were calling for a recession happening this year. Who knows? Maybe that can still play out. But just with what historical data tends to show us, I would be looking more so at mid or later 2026. I think that lines up with crypto, the yield curve inversion, as well as some other macro indicators I'll show you here in a minute or two. Also, it's important to know that with this recent dip that we had in the stock market about a month ago, that was 20 to 25%. I was talking about how that's a rare occurrence. We only get this about twice a decade. So you don't want to miss those opportunities when we have confirmation. These opportunities don't come along often, but in a recessionary environment, we'd be taking a look at 30% plus. And just bear in mind, as bad as all the news is, that I feel keeps a lot of people from buying into the markets when in hindsight, if you're able to play the long game, those are some of the best times to get those discounts. So just keep that in mind. And this is maybe my favorite chart because it just shows us perspective that when we do get these big corrections and there's all that fear, that's when we want to look for opportunities, as I talk about. Going over to the Shiller PE ratio, something interesting has just started to occur. So when we got that correction, we got back into, I'd say, like the second most elevated zone, but we've entered back into just the beginning of this bubble territory. Now, I've been making a lot of comparisons to 1998, how there was 25% rate cuts and then pausing for a little bit. And we're getting some similar sort of action going on now. So I think there's comparisons between the dot-com bubble, the AI bubble, potentially. So I do think there's still room for some upside and that we could see euphoria before we get the actual recession. So when there's euphoria and everyone says the recession's canceled, everything's good, that's when I would personally be very cautious. So I do think that can go a bit higher. Going over to crypto, as far as fear and greed, we are up in greed, same as we are with the stock market. I like how we can see this chart of lower highs and higher lows. But now we're starting to go sideways and maybe make some higher highs as well with those higher lows. So maybe there's positivity going into the crypto markets. On my channel, by the way, talk about a lot of different things crypto. I talk about macro crypto cycle conditions. I talk about Bitcoin mining stocks. I also do videos on different altcoins. So subscribe if you want to hear more about that. All right, the S&P 500, it's been in this upward ascending channel ever since the great financial crisis. So we've been in this upward channel. This was that most recent correction, about 20-ish% down. We could take a look at the daily to get a more accurate view, but 20-ish% plus. We are getting back up into some areas of resistance here. Let's take a look at our trusty Fibonacci retracement and see what we got going on here. So let's make sure our fib is on log scale. It is awesome. Let's go over to the daily. And we can see the fib, it's breaking above the 786, 786 going to be support, probably going to have some resistance here at the 888. You can see a lot of price action being honored back there. So the 888 at around 59.80 would be the next area to get through. And then it's just all-time high area, and we'll see what happens there. So we have been moving up rather quickly ever since early April. And so I would not doubt if we had a little bit of a pullback. You can see, for any Elliott wave people out there, this definitely, to me, looks like 5 ways up. And so it is possible sometime we get a corrective 3-wave down before resuming to the upside. So would not be surprised, with these moving averages being around here, we got a little bit of a corrective action somewhere in the 5,700 range, but then from there to go up. Let's take a look at the volatility index. This is the VIX. This is promising. So remember, when we see the volatility, the S&P getting above 30s, usually that's a good dip buying opportunity, which that was. But now it has gone under its daily moving averages, which is great. Let's go over to the weekly. And even the weekly, it's at its last moving average support area. So the VIX getting underneath here would be very bullish. And this is one of the leading indicators that I like. This is the percent of stocks that are above their 200-day moving average. And whenever this spikes down, that tends to be a good area to buy. You can see that matches up with middle and late 22, which was the last really best area to buy after the COVID crash. And so I do think that this is showing just more so that that was a good dip. Now we do have some resistance coming up here. We'll see what happens. But this has been a good leading indicator and so far as showing that. Let's take a look at the United States Central Bank balance sheet. This is our quantitative tightening, quantitative easing chart. And what we see here is the last time the Fed switched from QT to QE, that was when it hit that 100-month moving average. The gold is the 50, the dark blue is the 200. So we're really close to that 100-month moving average. The Fed isn't doing quantitative easing yet, but it does look like we are getting rather close to that. Let's go over to the yield curve and take a look at that. So the yield curve, it has been uninverting. And what it is important to know is that when it uninverts, I put these vertical red lines here to match up as close as I could with where the S&P bottom was. But what's important to note here, a couple of things, is that in the dot-com bubble and the great financial crisis, you can see 560 days there until the market bottom, 640 days. But also look at the steepness of the curve, how much it was uninverting. So right now, I don't think it's uninverting quite steeply yet, but that would be something to watch out for. But if we were to put ourselves out, around 650 days, look where that would be. That would be later 26, mid-later 26. And we talked about that in this chart here, that maybe the bottom would be around there, that we could still see, this is sort of my thought process, that we could still see new all-time highs. We could still see another top for a crypto cycle, get a little bit of euphoria before selling off. That's what the yields have shown us in the past. Another thing to keep in mind is that this uninversion has been quite large. So I do wonder, I don't know what the correlation is, but if we get a larger uninversion, that maybe it even takes longer to get to the next market bottom, and that the next corrective phase will be a bigger one. We'll see. Let's go over to some of the other data that we haven't looked at in a while. And unemployment, as long as it stays underneath this 50-week moving average at around 4.2, 4.3, I think that's still good. Something that is different now compared to the late 2000s. You can see here that the stock market, let's actually overlay that. We'll turn off our EMAs. Let's put the stock market over it. And we can see that the stock market was going up as unemployment's going down. So you want to see unemployment stay flat or go down. And as far as, this is showing the S&P, not showing the corrective part. Maybe that's because it's, I think just the way this chart's showing, it's not showing it on log scale. And so with unemployment, if it continues to go up, we could see the S&P continue to correct. But if unemployment stays kind of sideways, I think that still can be very bullish for the S&P 500. So that is something to watch for. Let's also take a look at inflation. We've had news about inflation coming out. Oh, we had it right there. Let's take a look at the inflation rate as well. There we go. And as far as inflation, I mean, for me, I consider this to be pretty good news as well. Inflation coming down, the Fed is that magical 2% area, so that is good news. Also, we want to see inflation coming down. As far as any comparisons to that 1998 area, I mean, inflation was still relatively low until it started to go up and the Fed started to raise rates. So I don't see the Fed raising rates unless we start to see inflation get up to that 3 to 4% area. Any others I want to look at? Let's take a look at interest rates. Here we go. United States interest rates. Just going to go through a few of these. Yeah, that'll work. And so 1998, make a lot of comparisons. 25 base point cut, and then holding. Remember, the stock market was doing very well during that time. We'll add on the S&P 500 again. The stock market was doing very well, even as they started to raise rates because of that inflation there. But once they started to cut rates by 50 basis points, that's when you wanted to watch out. Again, when they're cutting by 50 basis points, that's when something's broken in the market. We've seen that before, cutting by 50 basis points, shooting up. Here, they were raising rates so much because all the inflation concerns as well. So I know Trump, he's been talking about wanting the Fed to cut rates a lot, and we'll see what happens with all that. But right now, I think this fits in line with what we've seen historically. All right, let's get over to some of the, let's hop into Bitcoin quick, and then we'll get over to some of the Mag 7 stocks. Maybe we'll take a look at Palantir as well. And as far as Bitcoin, we have this macro fib. I've drawn it from the prior high to low from 21 to the low at 22, and we are right at this 1618 fib at around 102K. And right now, this fib is holding up. The more this holds up, the more that is bullish for Bitcoin. You can see that when it didn't hold up before, that's when we got bigger corrections later on. So if we are to see some sideways price action and see Bitcoin on the daily stay above 102K, I think that's really positive for Bitcoin. And I'll just show what happened in 2024, for example. Yes, there was new all-time highs in crypto, but you can see we are only getting wicks. And yes, I use Heikin-Ashi candles, but they're only wicks above that line, so that we were faked out 3 times. And once we start getting candle bodies, boom, we got to that next fib area. The Fibonacci retracement, it's our golden ratio indicator. So we got a little bit of a peak above that line before, came down, got rejected. But now, this is promising to me. So I do wonder, is next week going to show us another very positive sign? If we are going to get a candle body getting above that 102K, I think that is a wonderful sign. We also have the MACD turning green for the first time in a while. And I've talked about this a lot on this channel. When the MACD has turned green, we've had major moves coming to the tune of about 40K. So just something to keep in mind. All right, let's get to our Mag 7 stocks. You can see NVIDIA almost wanting to turn green on the MACD. It's probably going to be similar stories for a lot of these. Microsoft turning green, Apple still a little bit of ways away. We're just looking at the MACD right now. Amazon, Google, Meta. So a lot of these are either about to turn green. Microsoft already has. I want to take this off though so we can get a better view here. We can see that from this fib, I have these fibs drawn from the prior high to low. We can see NVIDIA struggling there at the 786. The 618 area, this is an area I watch for lower highs. We've gotten through this channel. This is a great thing here. We've gotten through this channel. Next, we want to see it get through the 786. I think if we get through the 786, yes, the 888 has kind of been there as resistance, but I'd be looking at challenging that all-time high. So, we are making this big move up. Maybe we would get a correction somewhere around back to that golden pocket at around 124 before resuming up. But I would not be surprised to see NVIDIA see some profit taking here, at least on the daily. As far as Microsoft goes, Microsoft getting back above its 1618 fib. So, this goes all the way back from 21 to 22, kind of like I showed you with Bitcoin. Here's that 1618 fib. There's no denying it. Came down to its former all-time high area here, back above the 1618. You can see it's challenging this top we had here. So you want to see Microsoft get above this, not get any sort of a recent double top. But the next major fib level is around 570, 568. If we zoom in a bit, and let's just draw a micro fib from this high to low and see what we got here. So yeah, we're right there at the 888, last bit of resistance there before challenging that all-time high. Does look like Microsoft wants to take that 888. So right now, Microsoft's top stock in the world. Things are looking pretty promising for it if it continues to go up. As far as Apple, we have that 1618 fib and the 100, that's light blue, and the 200, the dark blue moving averages, all right there around 220 to 217. So for Apple, that'd be important to get through. We zoom in here. It's trying to make, and I think it kind of is, making that 50-day moving average into support. So you want to see these moving averages get taken. Got rejected once off the 20, then it took it, lost it, took it again. If we start to take the 50 here, that's a lot of resistance there. But if so, that's when you'll probably see Apple's MACD start to flip positive. So Apple, it is trending sideways a little bit. You did have this lower low. I'm sure, again, there's, across the board from crypto to these stocks, you can draw a recent fib from high to low, and you can kind of see where things are at. Yeah, here's the golden pocket area, the 618 to the 65 in that micro fib. Getting there, that would show us that we're, again, getting above that 1618 macro support right here. So this whole area for Apple, getting above 223 would be awesome for Apple. All right, as far as Amazon, I'm sure it just looks like we can draw a lot of micro fibs here based on what's going on. And yeah, you can see it's being out of there. So it went into the golden pocket, got rejected off it a little bit. I do like that wick, though. It's showing that there is buy support. Not be surprised to see it come back down to the 0.5, somewhere around $200. And then you want to see Amazon get through that golden pocket into the 786 at around 222. Then I'd say that'd be showing us some more positive signs. Google, Google, we have not drawn out our fib in a while. Let's just extend that out. It looks like that fib is, nope, it's not off the log. Let's do that. So got up to that 2618, struggled with it in the past. This one, it is struggling to get above that 100 and that 200 moving average. There's been news recently about Google possibly being split up, and I think that's where some of this negative price actions been coming about. Let's turn that down a little bit. So I'm sure people are worried if that were to happen, if Google was to be split up from its search engine portion of the company. I don't know if that's going to happen. But as far as this fib goes, this is pretty important. So anytime I'm taking a look at a chart, if an asset, a crypto, whatever, gets under its 382 and isn't able to get above it, then I'm seriously looking for more downside to it. So we also have the 50-day moving average. On more macro scales, I'm looking at the 50-week moving average and the 382 that would be way down here. That's in a more macro environment, but micro-wise, taking the 50, that's one bit of positivity, but you want to see the 382 get taken. This is, as far as I'm concerned, all a nice discounted territory for Google. So as far as the Mag 7 stocks and for potential, taking a look at companies 20 years down the road, I do like the potential for Google. And right now it's not, it's not at the deepest discount you could have gotten it, but we are at about 20% off. Before we were 30% off. So, take that for what it's worth. But yeah, important level here for Google. If it gets a little bit of a rejection, we are making these series of higher lows. Maybe it comes back down to that 162 or even 156 price. Let's take a look at Meta. Meta's had one of the best charts really on the weekly. It never got below that 20-week moving average until recently. And then it got bought up nicely off the 200, back above that 20-week moving average. Let's go back to the daily. All these, we can just take a look at these micro fibs. We had such a big swing from high to low I think this is one of our indicators that it makes sense to be using, as well as the MACD. Remember, if the MACD is flipping positive, it's very bullish. But yeah, this is right in the golden pocket area. It doesn't have that um, 6.5, but I'll show you guys how to add that in there. It's really easy. So our golden pocket is 618 to 6.5, and we'll see where that lines up. Let's turn the background down. So yeah, it's right in there. If it's able to hold that as support, again, Meta has looked very strong, and I could see Meta if we get into a very bullish scenario. Meta, I could see getting at the top of the market euphoric, close to 900. So 860 to 902, I'd be looking at somewhere in there. Real quick before we go to Tesla, I did want to see, there was one thing I forgot to look at, and that was the MACD for the S&P 500. I did want to see what that is looking like as well. Um, let's turn that on. Yeah, so the S&P 500 also maybe about to turn green. So in the past, when it's turned green, it's been here, it's been here. I mean, that was a very positive move up. Here there's a little bit of a downturn. But yeah, overall, here, yes, it did go lower. That was late 22. Okay. So, is it possible we get, positive MACD that is a lower high? My one argument against this sort of scenario would be is we haven't even gone positive yet. And look how much of a move up it's done. So, I think that this could be, in my bias, I'm hoping for that it's setting up for more room to the upside when the MACD flips. All right, let's go over to Tesla and Palantir, and let's see here. So Tesla, it's still in this ascending channel, had a nice bounce off the 200, that golden pocket area, coming up a bit, um, like we did with the other stocks. Let's draw our micro fib. Yeah, got almost to the exact letter of it. It got a little bit of a rejection there off the 0.5. But we do have the 6.5 and the 618 up here. So Tesla, I'd be looking at that 390s area again and see what happens there. But, maybe we could see the big move up. Maybe we could see a little correction back down to 320 there for Tesla. Let's get rid of that for next time. We could draw it again if we need to. And we'll finish with Palantir. Palantir, to me, it's one of the most risk on tech stock assets out there. It's very much detached. And when I see in the stock market that there's stocks like this just still doing very well, to me, that says we're not in a recession yet, because we still have stuff like this running very hard. So Palantir, the next major fib area up would be this. Is that the 3618? Yeah, that is a 3618 at 147. So would not be surprised to see some profit taking there at 147. Remember, the PE ratio for this one's off the charts. We have 170, the 4236 at 184. There is a way to see the PE ratio. You bear with me a second. I haven't done this in a hot minute. Yeah, price earnings ratio. I mean, this is insane. 559. So just for perspective, even for the other Magnificent Seven tech stocks, we're seeing PE ratios in probably the 70s or 40s. Let's see, 30s for Microsoft, Google, 17. So the fact that we're seeing a PE ratio around 500, and that might be telling you that for Palantir that, do not be surprised to see some level of profit taking here soon. It does have a market cap of 305 billion. So if you're seeing all this positive news about Palantir, and you put in $1,000 right now and you wanted to double your money, you'd be expecting this to go to 600 billion. And is Palantir, an AI war tech stock, going to go up to that sort of a number? Again, the price of what the stock is to the earnings ratio, it's quite detached. So just keep that in mind. Probably worth, if you've gotten Palantir anywhere down around these lows, I would be guessing that'd be worth taking some level of profits in this whole area, really. Right now, it's escaped that double top sort of situation and could be going up. I'd say this area would be a good area for sell orders at around 146. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. And before I finish, I just wanted to address something that it's a comment that's come up a couple times, and that's about my microphone volume. I am working on it. I believe it or not, I'm talking into a microphone right now, and for some reason, my computer, doesn't boost the volume more. So I'm sorry that you guys have to turn up the volume on your TVs or computers a little bit higher than normal. I I am going to get a new mic where that issue is going to be fixed. So early stages of this crypto channel, but with all the subs and the views, I have gotten a check from Google recently, so I am going to use some of that money to get a better microphone. I just want to say I'm sorry about those issues. I do rewatch some of these videos later, and I notice that myself, especially if I'm putting videos out in the morning and that the volume's low, and I feel bad about that. But I did want to let you guys know that 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 situation is going to be resolved. And yeah, appreciate all the feedback too, by the way. And I'm right there with you. I'm a little bit upset that this microphone, some reason, doesn't get the volume up. I'll probably try some videos without this microphone and see if my Mac microphone works better than that. It does capture more of the background noise, so I have to make sure that there's nothing going on in the background, dogs barking, the automatic cat feeder, dishwasher, something like that. So, just trying to make this all sound as professional as possible as we grow the channel. So again, thank you for the feedback. Keep it coming. If something seems off, I want to know about it so I can work on giving you better and better quality content. So all that feedback is welcome. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful Thursday. Take care.